Let's now have a look at another example where the function, rather than returning some value, basically numerical string or whatever else, it returns actually the boolean true or false. And the name of the function will be allowed to enter, let's say, requirement to enter the club or something like this. Age as an argument, which is the mandatory one. As you can see, we don't associate any default value with it. And then we return basically boolean true or false based on the expression. And I'm going to put in parentheses here, age equals or more or equal 18. And if it's going to be more or equal 18, then obviously this expression will return true. Otherwise, it will return boolean false. So what I'm going to do now is use the var dump again, just to see what data type and what value the function has returned based on what argument I'm going to pass through. And I'm going to use this allowed to enter, and the value I'm going to pass through as an argument will be 20 for the first one. So 20 should evaluate to true, and then I'm going to make sure that it evaluates to false by using 10. And if we preview everything in the browser, and there we go, true for the first one and false for the second one, they both of the boolean type. What we can also do with the same thing, now that we have this function, let's do the if-else statement, and let's go for if allowed to enter and age, say, let's pull it from a variable, let's say age equals 17, for instance. Let's say you got it from when the form has been submitted, someone typed in how old they are, and you associated this variable, basically this value sent from the form with this variable, and then we just pass it to our conditional statement here. So if allowed to enter, we're going to echo in the browser, welcome user with the exclamation mark. Else, what we're going to do is echo go away, you're too young, my friend. So something completely different. Obviously, it's entirely up to you what you're going to put in here. Okay, so if we save it here, refresh the page, and there we go, go away, you're too young, and so on. If we change the value associated with this variable to say 19, that should now pass, and we should see a different message, obviously, welcome user, because this if statement, which we've obviously had in the first line, obviously returned true. And this is why this portion of this conditional statement has been returned. We can obviously return any type data type from our function. Let's now try and do the array. So get shopping list function, for instance, without any arguments. And this is going to be the last exercise we're going to be doing in this video. So return an array, 2 square brackets, and then bread. On the new line, I'm going to use milk. And the last one will be apples. And then what I'm going to do is associate it with a shopping list variable. So get shopping list. And now what I'm going to do is simply print it using print R function in the browser, shopping. And we could also wrap it with the echo pre-tag so that it's nicely formatted in the browser as well. Echo closing pre-tag. Okay, now we've been using this for quite a while. Now that we're using functions, probably we could move it to the function. So let's copy the entire thing. And before this get shopping list, create a new function and call it, what can we call it? Some meaningful name, say print array. And we are going to take array as an argument, and we only want to take arrays. So we are going to type hint it array, and then we go for the argument name. Let's simply keep it array, and by default we associate it with the with an empty array. So if the array is empty for any reason, we will basically see an empty array. And let's paste what we've just copied. And this is the only time where I would use echo inside of the function. Basically, one of these times that you actually are allowed to use echo, because that's all we want. We want to just call this function, pass the argument, and let's just replace this print r with the name of the function and do it this way. You see, much easier. Now we can basically, whenever we need to print the array in a nice pre-formatted way, then we can just call this function as many times as we need on as many arrays as we want to, and it's all going to be nicely displayed in the browser. Let's quickly have a look at that in the browser actually. So there we go. This is our array nicely, each item on its own line, obviously, because we've used this function, which uses this echo pre-tags, pre-HTML tags, in other words. So we've got bread, milk, and apples, which is obviously returned from this get shopping list function. Now, I'll be honest with you, I'm still not quite happy with the fact that we're actually echoing anything from this print array, because if you think about it, there might be a situation where you would like to save the content of this array, nicely formatted using these pre-tags, into a file, for instance, or into the database. Again, we can do multiple things with this. And if we obviously leave it like this, just echoing directly from a function, all we can do is basically echo this to the browser. And I'm, again, not quite happy with that. So what we are going to do is wrap it in a buffer, basically an output buffer. And let's quickly go back to the PHP site, and let's look for ob_start. This is the first function that we're going to be using. That turns on output buffering, and let's quickly have a look at what it says. This function will turn output buffering on. While output buffering is active, no output is sent from the script other than headers. Instead, the output is stored in an internal buffer. It's like a box, basically. Let's say we start adding all the things, and once we are happy, we can use one of these functions, and we're going to be using this ob_get contents to get everything from this container and then return it from a function. So again, we're going to return value rather than echo it, which is going to be pretty nice because it's going to give us nice string, which we can do many things with, obviously, later on. So the contents of this internal buffer may be copied into a string variable using ob_get contents. To output what is stored in the internal buffer, use ob and flash, which would basically work the same way as if we echo the whole thing straight away in a browser from within the function. Alternatively, ob and clean will silently discard the buffer contents. Okay, that's enough for now. Let's quickly go back to our editor, and let's start with the first line within this print array will be ob_start now. And we're not going to pass any arguments. We're not going to go into further details about these functions. We just want to start the buffer now so that we can collect everything. We can do many things here. We can request files, we can process do some calculations inside of this buffer. And now that we have done all this, let's take things, let's close this whole thing and extract everything as string nicely. So we're going to associate it with, actually we can return it straight away because we don't need to associate it with the variable because we're returning from this function anyway, and we're going to go for ob_get clean, and that's all we need to do. And now if I save it and preview it in a browser, you're going to see that we're not seeing anything in the browser, because what's happened now? Now we're not echoing, we haven't done anything with this output. Basically, we've returned it, and as you may remember, returning doesn't print anything in a browser. So what we need to do if we want to display the whole thing in a browser, simply proceed the call to this print array function with the echo statement. But it's our choice now. We have a choice. We can echo it, we can save it to the database, we can associate it with a variable, you can pass it as an argument if you want to another function, and so on. So it gives us more control. That's why, as I said, always use return. Always use return unless you really have a good reason for using the echo from within the function. So as you can see, this gives us now more options, basically, into more flexibility. We can do with this whatever we want. So let's say array, we can create a variable associated with this value, and then we can echo this if we want to. We can obviously echo this and associate the same way as we did before in one line. So if we preview in a browser, the whole thing obviously is true. And that's how we're going to end this video. Let's move to the next one.